Now it is my pleasure to introduce Miss Maxine Fassberg. Maxine is one of the most powerful people in Israel. Maxine was the CEO of Intel Israel's largest company, responsible for close to 2% of all of Israel's GDP. And according to CNN, Maxine is amongst the 10 most powerful women in global tech. I should also mention that Maxine is a graduate of the Hebrew University and today is a member of the Board of Governors as well as the Board of Managers. Maxine, please. Clicker.
My God, and I thought you don't believe everything that's written in your newspaper, and I have to extend it to members of the Hebrew University VP segment too. Don't believe a word of it. I'm really glad to be here today. I am going to try and give you a little bit of a long view of where I see Israeli industry and where we've been and where we're going, and then try and relate it to the model that Intel has become in the Israeli economy. I will say one thing, Intel has been in Israel for 43 years. And that is a long journey with a very long and fruitful relationship. One of the outcomes is obviously the 2% of the GDP for the country. So if you look back on where we came from and where we started with agriculture in Israel and textiles. And it has been said that we've moved from the cotton fiber to the optical fiber, if you want to get poetic about it. But seriously, the Israeli industry really did start in those kind of areas. It's very interesting after we heard Oded today speak about what they're doing to see how we're maybe closing this loop and going back to where we actually started. In the recent years, we did move to high tech and to doing a lot of work that was augmented by looking at the strengths of the defense and cyber and things like that. And I'll try and give you a little bit of a look forward to where we may be going. And I think we started hearing some of it earlier from the earlier speakers. I wanted to just give you a quick snapshot because, you know, I think what we heard today, and we heard it in some of the panels, there is not a really good logical explanation about Israel. Why? Why do people invest in Israel? Why, with all the global instability or geopolitical, whatever we're supposed to call it, why do people come there? The bottom line, honestly, is the people. The people, the quality of people, and the quality of education. Okay? Am I getting there?
I see the finger.
Okay. He threatened me. But seriously, and I'm sorry that Yinon's not here anymore, there is one thing the Israeli government has to understand. We need to be investing in education. We need to be educating our kids. Our kids, doesn't matter how you look at it, we produce 6,000 engineers a year. We produce 6,000 graduates who are capable of going into engineering and those kind of fields because they do 5 points of maths. And if we don't keep growing that number, we are not going to be able to keep up this amazing story that we've all heard about and we're talking about. That's the one issue. And the other issue, which I think was mentioned today and is certainly part of the solution or the problem, depends which side you want to look at it, we have to incorporate two populations which were discussed in great detail, the ultra-religious population and the Arab population, both female and male, if we want to grow the workforce. What this foil shows you is that trade will be growing more moderately in the coming years as opposed to what we had before 2008. Now, if we think about the significance of economies, and we heard today that the Israeli economy is around 3.2% growth, if we are going to be able to utilize that, we have to invest, we have to educate, and we have to finance. And if you look at this one tells you that one of the reasons we're such a strong economy is our employment rate. We are considered a full employment country because employment rates of under 4%, unemployment rates of under 4% basically represent a fully engaged and employed economy. So if we want to keep growing, we've got to find new sources, and these can only come from the two populations that we mentioned. Israel's macroeconomy, the GDP growth rate, you can see we're doing better than most countries. We certainly are doing an amazing job, consider that we are now, as you heard from Bloomberg earlier, a developed economy. The startup scenes in Israel, I'm not going to go through all these figures. I think you saw a lot of it, you've heard a lot of it, and you will hear more about it. But the army is one of the feeders of the ecosystems that creates the first access to new technologies. But it's the universities and the research institutes, which at the end of the day, each university has its own Yesum equivalent. And this is where the encouragement of all these new startups is coming from. And then you work with the major multinationals like Intel to come and see what you can do. By the way, one of the things, I'll just keep going here. One of the things that you have to understand is that Startup Nation was a good start. It's only the engine. And one of the differences between Intel and many of the other companies who come to invest in Israel is Intel stays. And I'm going to show you what Dov Fruman, by the way, Dov Fruman, who was the founder of Intel in Israel, was also a professor at the Hebrew University. And Dov brought Intel to Israel first and foremost through research and development, and established the design center in Haifa to do that. But then he said, that's not enough. You've got to be able to tie it to what the corporate is actually doing and make it a hub, make it important enough that Intel cannot do without Intel Haifa. And that's essentially, if you look at the products that come out of there, products that were developed in Haifa, like Skylake, which is probably in most of your computers these days, was developed by an Israeli team, led by a woman, by the way, Shlomit Weiss. And it became essential for Intel to have the R&D centers in Haifa. But Dov said that's not good enough. If you really want to succeed, you've got to go to manufacturing. And so establishing the manufacturing centers in Israel is what created the huge investments. And I'll show you in a minute some of those investments. But we did expand and move on to other parts of the business. So you can see that in the center of Israel, we have a very large communications group who are working on everything from including 5G and modems. And then we have, in Jerusalem, we have both R&D and communications. And in the south, in Kiryat Gat, we have the factories. When you look at what it has become, it's become the largest private employer in the country. It has over 10,000 people who work for Intel in Israel. And you can see the kind of multiplying factor that this causes because of all the indirect employment that goes with it. All these 10,000 people have to eat and drive and all the rest of it. That has created a lot of money for the country in terms of export. It depends on the year, 1%, 2% of the Israeli GDP, and about $3.3 billion, not about, $3.3 billion of export last year. So the next question is, okay, so what's next? What comes after this? And if you look at where the Israeli economy is going and where we excel in terms of startups and innovation, you've heard about biotech and health. We heard a little bit about what's going on in the financial world. The financial world, especially fintech, as it's now called, is looking at how the banking world is going to totally change. And I think we heard about that today. And I think one of the lessons that you will be able to take from everything you've heard today, the industry, doesn't matter how you put the industry in inverted commas, that is not able to seriously change is going to die. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the OEMs for the car industries who cannot make the leaps that we heard about, or we're talking about the banking and financial systems that cannot make the leap, will certainly not survive. Nobody needs to go to their bank to get everything done. Everything happens online, or everything can happen online. And the models of industry, be whatever nature they are certainly going to change. You will hear later in a panel that Margaret will lead about the cyber and where we're going there and what it means and how it can be potentially dangerous if we don't understand and deal with it, and what the implications are to the startup nation and to the innovation that's needed coming out of Israel to do it. I'm not going to talk about Mobileye, so let's move on. And then we're going to have to use or try and use the Intel model of going from R&D through research, becoming an essential piece, and then going into manufacturing if we really want to make it something worthwhile for the country and provide jobs that are so needed in an economy that otherwise will become very stagnant. So imagine, and here I will say this in all fairness, I wrote this foil before, okay? Before the deal was signed, so I'm clean. But imagine if we could turn the automotive technology R&D into an automotive manufacturing investment. And I will tell you that in a previous attempt to be really innovative, there was a company called Better Place that tried to do something different, but failed to understand the business model and the need to actually manufacture in Israel. And they signed a contract and went to Turkey. We can't afford for those kind of mistakes to happen in this country again. So when we look at what could be, and I'm in the imagine if space, everything we do has to be translated from theoretical, we heard from the professor, into applications, but into manufacturing and production and productivity that will change the map of Israel. Look at it from fintech. We spoke about that. I'm going to skip that one. But think about if you could turn Israel into a global financial hub. And I've heard many people say that with the way things are changing and the pace at which things have to change, this can become a reality. And you know, one of the dreams that we had was around food and water. And I had a conversation with the Prime Minister, and I said to him, imagine if there wasn't a thirsty child anywhere in the world. And he said to me, imagine if there wasn't a hungry child anywhere in the world. And I believe, and I think a lot of the people in this room know, that this kind of a vision can be made to happen from Israel, because Israel has the infrastructure, the startup mentality, the capabilities, and with the investments that are made in both by the government and by the universities and by the companies that support the startups and the Innovation Center Authority in Israel, we can make those dreams a reality. No more hungry children anywhere in the world. Thank you.